There's a book out. It's called Mapping Trophy Whitetails.
I've got a copy of it.
And so, you know what that thing costs now?
I can't even imagine.
Oh, it's the craziest thing. So I was buying it for like 20 bucks or something. I think a guy told me the other day $175.
Does it just come in the big format?
I think so.
Yeah, color version. Yeah, hardcover. Yeah,
so,
I have a copy of it.
So they've done.
It's really quite a good book.
Oh, it is. Right.
Yeah.
And
talks a lot about
terrain features and stand location spots.
Yeah.
And he had said in there, and I agree with it completely, whether you see sign on that inside corner or not, hang a stand.
Yeah.
Right? And there's no doubt.
Yeah, inside corners are very powerful.
Over the years.
If it's an open field, it drives them around the corner. Something like this, they're just going to cross right there.
Yeah. Yep. No, so this will be one of the best stand sites one of these days when I get to cover more up front even, but yeah, so this trail here will go to the right and down, and then it connects to the end of those points that come out, which is again just right above the truck. But you know, it's so much easier with that dozer pushing through that kind of stuff than what it is with that DR mower. Right? Here's some more of the trees.
I get beat to hell by that mower, man.
Oh, I know all about it.
13 horsepower.
Look at this here red oak they cut down and just left lay there, right?
And that was your first year here, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why they would leave that one.
Well, I know there's another one over here. So look how big the tree stump was.
Yeah.
Wow. And they are hollow on the bottom, but what you do is you just cut that bottom piece off, right? Yeah. It'll take, I mean, they're 60 foot tall. Everybody's different on how they actually hunt, their tactics, how they go about it. And I try to say that to people, and they don't understand what I'm saying. But I typically don't put food everywhere on a first-year property, and I typically don't cut everywhere on a first-year property. I'll start building the bedding area and travel corridors, and then depending on what the landowner wants, obviously, I'm going to focus on that. But over time, I feel like cutting the whole property and putting food everywhere, I'm going to get way more deer, right?
Yep. In daylight.
In daylight, and hold them more year-round instead of having a seasonal property that so many people have, right? And then if I
don't mind a seasonal property as long as they're there in the hunting season.
right. And most of these properties actually get way better in hunting season than in the summertime because of crop ground around and everything else, and there's no pressure, and there's plenty to eat everywhere.
In this kind of country,
Right. But once I feel like, you know, on my camera photo pictures, if I got a buck or two and I'm not able to kill him, well, then I'm going to reduce where I got all my extra food, right? And so that's just my thinking on it. And that's what I just don't plant it, or I just kill it out with Roundup or whatever. Just don't do any maintenance on it. But yeah, I mean, again, I have not seen any negative at all on making them so thick. And I know these trees are growing so fast. I mean, I can study the rings in the trees now on people's property, and most of the time they'll tell them when they timbered it the last time, right?
You can see the change, the growth spurt.
It's going to be an 8 to 10 year, and it's going to jump, right? Unbelievable.
Yeah. You were talking earlier about the importance of particular ways people hunt, and earlier today you were talking about the camera ran out of energy but you were talking about how you let friends hunt this property.
Yeah.
Last year you killed a 171-inch buck, and
last year I killed 165 and 7/8.
Okay.
And then the one before that was a 171.
Okay. So you're killing deer like that 2 years in a row.
Right.
And your buddies come on and they kill a half-rack buck and an 8-point buck. The habitat, the hunting, everything that's equal that they're presented with.
Stand sites, the time of the year that they want to hunt, as many days as they want to hunt, you know, the weapon that they're wanting to hunt with. You know, a lot of guys are going to restrict it to bow or whatever. Whatever they want to do, but I want them to tell me what they're doing. Right? But besides that...
But you're learning from that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
You've been honing for decades your ability to hunt public land and to kill big bucks.
And
And now these guys come on and you create a property where you can do that, have a higher opportunity of doing that than you can on public land.
And I'm doing it.
But they're not doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important message to convey to the average guy who's spending a whole lot of money on a small property trying to develop it. You can't do that and then just sling a bow over your shoulder and wander out to a stand.
Yeah. They think that the tree stand spot is 100% the answer to that deer laying dead next to it, right? And that's not the
really,
case.
The main answer is, what was your scent control like? What was your approach to the stand like? You've done the stand placement for them, so we know that's going to be good because of your experience. So everything is ready. All they need to do is look at themselves and say, how is my behavior not allowing me to get a 160 or 170 inch buck? And that's what everybody has to do in a small property. And by the way, most people aren't going to be able to do it at all anyway, except at the rate that they might get struck by lightning, because you chose this place and you knew there were big bucks here and you know how to get them. So it's not enough just to do the habitat thing.
No, it's not.
If you want to kill mature bucks, you have to hone your hunting skills.
So I've tried everything legal.
Which, by the way, I don't do. I'm not, a highly skilled hunter. You are, and probably if I hunted this property, I wouldn't do as well as you do either. So, and that describes most of us, I think.
Well, one of the reasons is because I've put so much time and effort into it, right? I mean, when I was in college, I was hunting 50 to 60 days a year, you know what I'm saying? And I spent my whole entire life out here. But as I've been working for these landowners over like the last 15 years, I'll go set up a spot, right? And I think this is like one of the best ones. I love this location, this stand, everything I've done here. Well, then I'll get there and they're not successful and don't think much of it or whatever, right? And so I'm always trying to push the envelope and learn more for myself so that I can help, right?
Right.
And so one of the things was cut the whole property. Like I mentioned before, I'd say 5-6 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that was a great answer, but I'm positive now it is, right?
I'm in the same boat. I learned exactly the same thing over the course of several years.
And so by the fact of me not having these guys as successful as I want them on their own property, how do I figure out what's going on? I do the same thing on my property to where I can study the results better, right? And there's nobody in my position that's bringing 7 guys a year to hunt their place. There's none. Because what they got to do is they got to kill a good deer so they can show everybody in the hunting industry that they know what they're doing, basically, right?
Exactly.
Well, I'm getting past all of that stuff, right? All that pressure and all that, because I already know there's nothing better that we can do than this stuff here. Right. There's not. So how do I take the guy to the next level, right? It's studying how guys go about it now, right? It's exactly what we're saying. And it's going to be a process because everybody that I have here hunts slightly different and they don't even know they're hunting different, right? One guy's going to be grunt calling, the next one's going to be rattling, whatever, right? Well, this year the new twist is nobody takes a grunt call or any of the other stuff with them.
Good advice.
But up to this point, I've allowed them to do whatever they want, right? And so this year I'm going to put that one rule in and we'll see how it changes their success, right? I don't do any of it on this property because this area has so much hunting pressure. All these deer have heard all of it.
You're sitting out there squawking on a...
it's the worst thing you can possibly do in a high hunted area, right?
But if you watch a TV show that's trying to sell those things,
I know,
they tell you
it's
should
the
be
answer.
using it. And so
anyways,
so this is a higher order problem. So you have 3 orders. You have your own skill level that you developed over a lifetime. You have your friends who want to kill a big buck. You put them on a place where they can, and they haven't achieved it yet. Now you're going to try to coach your friends by making some not very harsh rules. You know, don't take a call and don't be banging antlers together. It's a much higher order of problem to get a guy that you visit for 2 days a year, and then you walk away and you're leaving this beautiful property that you've created, and he's going to be frustrated that he can't kill anything there. So it sounds to me like what you're trying to do is learn you've already learned how to teach habitat, how to do the habitat. It looks like you're studying and learning how to teach hunters to be better hunters in a real way, not the fake way that we get on TV.
The person is the hardest thing to deal with, right? It's not the animal or the vegetation or the terrain features. It's the individual, because they all have information in their head that they think might be right. But it's speculation. Most of it's not facts, right? And so this is one of the hardest things that I'm ever going to have to deal with, right? But that's the reason these properties here that I have, they're going to be showpieces, right? I mean, as this here, because as long as the mature animals keep getting harvested, then all of them still going to understand that they're here, and there's a possibility of getting them harvested, and I keep working with. Now, I got my access is decent. They're not perfect yet, but over time they're going to get better. But you know, and I've made the trails, a lot of them, easy for them to walk through the property without making a lot of noise, right?
That's for
and
sure.
they're not going to get lost in the property, right? Like a lot of guys will be wandering around with the flashlight trying to find their stands, right? And so there's a lot of those things that is fail-safe that they can't mess up almost.
Here's a question for you. Do you know that those guys aren't getting out of their stand and wandering around and still hunting?
Well, see, along with that, right, a person knows nothing about what somebody else is doing unless that person tells you, right? And that's every part of life, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, that's true.
And so that's all social media, everything, everybody's going to make themselves look better than what they are, right? Nobody's as good as what some people think that they are on something, correct? So, but what I'm getting at on it is you know, if they're friends of mine, and if they're honest with me and they make a mistake, that's fine with me. I'm not getting upset about mistakes, because that's how I learn, right?
Yeah,
because once I make a mistake, I stay at it and I figure it out. And that's what happened on the scent control to get to that level, right? Nobody else helped me on that. That was years and years and years, and it's the same thing. It's years and years and years of learning how to hinge cut the correct method, and that maintenance is an important thing, and all these different things, right? But so I know I'm doing a lot of talking, but what I'm saying is I keep pushing and trying to keep getting facts and not speculation, and I'm going to learn from these guys coming, because they're going to be coming for years.
They're teaching you.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're going to be hunting my property for free. I'm not charging anybody for years, because we like each other, right? It's one of the main reasons. But I get to use them as
a learning tool.
Yeah, an experiment or whatever, right?
You can observe what is it that they're doing that
I can help.
isn't as efficient as it could be.
I mean, I can tell them everything, but they're only going to listen to a part of that, right? And so, but over time, and they keep seeing if I'm still successful, and they haven't become successful yet on my place, they're going to listen better.
Yes.
Right?
I agree with that.
And that's the benefit of a co-op, right?
Yes.
I mean, if my neighbor isn't killing a deer, or the deer he wants to kill, and I'm having him over for a barbecue and he's seeing what I'm killing, usually he's going to ask me for some help or some direction on what to do. And if I help him, he's usually growing more deer and more mature animals than he's harvesting anyways.
I can't imagine anything that I've ever done, including all the habitat work, that made my work better than when Jake Ealinger and I formed the Bean Creek Deer Cooperative. And we started freely sharing, even with people in the neighborhood that we knew were trespassing on our neighbors' properties. Let them know what's out there.
Yeah.
We showed them all the bucks that we were getting on camera. We showed them videos of bucks that we were passing. And we really, I think, made it, not just Jake and I, but the core group of people that created that, made it a much better hunting place.
Yeah.
Much better.
Well, it takes a group in anything.
And it's because when you share that information with people, they know you passed that buck and now it's standing in front of them.
Yeah.
They have to think differently about it than they ever did before.
Yeah.
And so...
And along with that, if you're showing them how to improve habitat and they actually get out there and start doing some of that work and seeing results off of what they're doing, it's the most addicting thing to know that you're improving your place.
Yeah.
You know, I'm improving the value of the land. I'm improving it for hunting, right? I'm improving my recreation. I'm improving the tree value. There's just so many things I'm improving, right?
Yep.
my success rate of the harvest. I mean, just so anyways, the more they do, the more they're going to want to do it. And there's many guys that say, man, I just love this year-round stuff.
I think just sharing what you know is the most important thing you can do in a neighborhood.
And then that's how you
so
gather.
many guys tell me, you know, I don't want people to know that truck's going on.
No, I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
But say if I give you information and you go study it and then you got some questions and you ask me something like, wait a second, I didn't even think about that, right? Mm-hmm. That's how you keep learning. Yes. It's not hiding it back here in the corner of the garage. I'm going to protect my data in the corner of the garage. Hey, there's a lot smarter people out there than me, right?
And here's the thing about this, and people should think about this. Let's say you have a couple of 4.5-year-old bucks in your neighborhood. Beautiful bucks with 150 inches of antlers. You got 2 of them there, and your neighbor kills one. Well, you know the habitat could support 2 of them, so one of those 3.5s is probably going to take his place the next year.
Right.
I've seen this in bass fishing too. You catch a bass off a spot. Let's say there's one little ice hut in a lake I used to fish in northern Michigan that I caught a 7-pound bass off of. I don't think there was another 7-pound bass in that lake. That sunken fishing house was the best place on the lake for a bass to grow. Next year I caught exactly the same size bass off of that same exact spot because a 6-pounder came in and grew to 7 pounds.
Right.
And that's exactly what's going to happen on your deer hunting property is if you can support 3 or 4 3.5 to 5.5-year-old bucks, there's always going to be 3 or 4 there.
Yeah.
Even if your neighbor killed one.
Yeah.
Because he gets replaced only 1 year later. Yeah. Yep.
No, I agree completely. And if the neighbor thinks that there's 2 150s walking around, he's less likely to shoot the 110, right?
For sure.
So he's going to pass that 110, and then if he sees it the next year or the year after that, he's like, wow, I done something beneficial, right? And that's the start of the whole process.
Well, the thing is, a lot of guys have never seen 150 inch or 140 inch, or in Michigan, most guys have never seen a 130 inch buck while they're sitting out in the woods.
Right.
So when you show them that there's one right there and, you know, you got a picture 500 yards from his sitting spot, it makes a difference in how
they have hope that it's possible.
Right. I mean, in Michigan, a commemorative Bucks of Michigan buck is a 100-inch buck, I think, with a bow. You know, so most people have never seen a mature buck.
Right.
Like 90% of hunters probably.
I agree.
And so sharing what you know about the deer in the area, I think is very powerful.
Well, when I started putting those videos out, and you mentioned it earlier, I had people get a hold of me and say, hey, this ain't a good idea. You're going to mess up my business because you're giving away too much information.
You mean the videos where you were on the military crest building buck beds? Yeah. Those are classic videos now.
And so ends up being, though, what I learned is by giving away everything I got, I learn more.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
And so you get around the right people is what happens.
And you help more people.
Yeah. And you get around the right people.
You created a larger client base.
100%.
You're advertising what you can do.
You know, the last 2 years, the number of habitat guys, businesses, has absolutely exploded all across the Midwest. You wouldn't believe how many have got a hold of me and say, hey, if you don't have enough time to do all your work, can you pass some of that work off to me? And
of course, you can't do that.
Up until this point, I can't do that at all because I haven't seen their work, right?
Right. Now, Colin here, who's behind the camera, has reached out to you. He's reached out to me. He's reached out to Jake and said, I'll come and work for you guys because he wanted to learn. And that's the way you do it. You can't just call you up on the phone and say, hey, Jim, will you send people my way? Well, you don't know whether he's any good or not. You really need to work at it, and young people that want to get involved in this business need to reach out.
And the thing, too, that's good about new guys coming in, if they have a lot of the correct data, that is, right? They can be at a little cheaper price, right?
Exactly.
Help that client get moving forward and get established.
And that client will then be a reference. And they can get prices up to a par with what you guys are making.
It just takes a little time, right? Like any industry, you know. Right. But to jump in there and think you're going to throw a big number out there and you're going to be making all this money, you're not going to stay busy enough, most of it.
Well, the problem is, too, most people that are jumping into it don't understand how much more important this woody habitat, woody browse and forb habitat is compared to food plotting. So they come in and say, I'll plant your food plot for you and this and that, I'll clear your land for you, but they're not going to create what you create when you go to a client's property. And so you have to, we somehow have to train enough people or get enough people to understand that this is the important part of it, not that food plot out there. The food plot's helpful for certain things, but you have to have the woody habitat. You have to have it.
So did you go to that QDMA property in North Carolina? It was like 2,000 acres.
No, I have not been there.
Okay, so they done a habitat day there. It might have been 4 years ago or so, and it was 2,000 acres, and this guy had, I might be wrong, but I'm almost positive it was 400 acres of food plot, right? Because he was trying to grow a Boone and Crockett in North Carolina, right? Yeah. And have a hunting place there, right? Yeah. So he had 2 full-time managers on the property. Then he hired Dr. Craig Harper to come in and manage it, right? Yeah. Craig recommended that he eliminated like 90% of the food sources and turn them into old fields, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so we get there and we're going around, right? And it's like this.
Yeah.
I mean, because they had so many open fields that they let go, right? Yeah. And the guy had these monster deer feeders out there that he was putting tons and tons of food out a year, and he took all of them away too, right? Because the native vegetation
it's better for the deer.
You know, Dr. Harper went in and explained all the calcium and nutrients that you're going to be getting out of these plants and all this here.
And really what you've created here is an old field-like environment.
100%.
Old field is by far the best environment for deer. And even if you look at it historically, in pre-Columbian times, there weren't any deer in northern Michigan. It was nothing but canopied forest up there, white pine forest, and deer couldn't live there. There wasn't enough food there. And then, but they all live down here, so you can look in old Indian mounds and stuff and find all kinds of whitetail bones down here, but there weren't any up north. And then over time, they got overhunted down here, and they started to deforest. In the 1800s, they deforested all of northern New York, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and that became deer habitat, and then the deer grew up there, but only because they created this there.
And at the same time, you see all those old photos of those big bucks that they bring out on trains and everything else. Yeah. Right? These big old rack bucks, and they're not there anymore because they went from the habitat that was available.
Well, they had the available habitat at the time, but they were still using traditional cedar swamps and stuff, but they depleted the cedar swamps because the populations got too big and they can't survive without those winter refuges. Because they're going to move in the UP, as soon as the snow starts falling, they're moving hundreds of deer into a small space, and they're going to huddle there for months. I mean, it could be May or late May before the snow's completely off.
Those white cedar, they produce a lot of food for them because like all winter long, those little boughs are falling off those white cedars, and they're just walking around picking them up.
And you know, they've done quite a few DNRs across the country in the northern states have done studies on white cedar swamps, and it's almost impossible to regenerate one. In other words, in order to regenerate one, you have to fence it off with a high fence, because as soon as a cedar tree pops his head out of the ground, he's gone. So they can't grow, and you can't plant them and get them to grow. No matter how many you plant, the deer come in that winter and eat them all. So you can't recover them without heroic engineering efforts. So
I got some guys up in northern...
So this is the way to do it.
Got some guys in northern Wisconsin that's using a plastic fence now, an 8-foot plastic, and to get oaks to regenerate. And they'll blow a hole in that fence sometimes, but you just got to stay on it. And it's working, but there's a lot of effort in it and expense to make it happen.
Well, if you look at some of these heavily browsed trees, like I've done it with oak trees. You got a trail like this, and you got an oak tree that's like that. That tree could be 15 years old. And every time a deer walks by, they take the top off of it. You put a fence around it, and it might grow 10 or 12 feet in 1 year because it's got a huge root system.
We had a tree planting in Iowa, and the forester come out and he says, hey, you know, the deer have made these all into bushes, and you got to come out here and prune all of these so you can get 1 leader up above them, you know. Man, I spent a bunch of time in there. I'm saying probably 30 to 40 hours in there pruning. It was probably maybe 2 acres. those things took off, those trees did. And they grew, I'm not exaggerating, I'm saying 8, 10 foot that year.
Right.
And the wind hit them. And I come out there and these things are all bent over like this right here.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah, because they were used to the support with all the limbs, right?
Yeah,
And I put all that huge root system into that one shoot.
They got one ring.
That thing went straight up, and there's all horseshoes out there. I was like, son of a gun.
Weak wood.
The majority of them stood back up. But.
Yep.
Well, we're up on a ridge, I see.
Yeah, just right back by the truck. So.